Okay, 0.1 is absolute value equations. We are going to solve absolute value equations, but first we're going to remember what absolute value is. So the absolute value of x is represented with these two bars, but instead of saying the bars, you say the absolute value of x, and it represents the distance from x to the origin. The origin is 0 on a number line or on a coordinate plane. So, for example, when we're going to evaluate these, the absolute value of 13 is in how far it is from the origin. Okay, now 13 is 13 spaces from the origin, so the absolute value of 13 is 13. How about the absolute value of -7? Okay, now it's 7 spaces from the origin. It's on the negative side, but it doesn't matter. It's just how far is it? It is 7 spaces, so this is +7. Okay, what about for C, the absolute value of -81? Right, it's just 81. It is 81 spaces from the origin. What about the absolute value of 0? 0. And 0 is not positive or negative, so we don't have to worry about the signs. Okay, we treat absolute value like parentheses. So if I look at E, it's the absolute value of 3 minus 7. This is like imaginary parentheses. So I do what's on the inside first, and I keep the bars on the outside. So 3 minus 7 is -4. Okay, and now that I'm done with the inner parentheses, what is the absolute value of -4? It's 4. Okay, for F, same idea. Absolute value is on the outside. These are like parentheses. -2 plus 11 is 9. And the absolute value of 9 is 9. Okay, for G, absolute value of 5 squared minus 3 times 7. Absolute value is like parentheses, so I'm going to do the inside first. Order of operations applies no matter what. So 5 squared is 25. 3 times 7 is 21. Okay, am I done? No, I have to finish the parentheses. So it's the absolute value of 4, which ends up being 4. And I evaluate the absolute value last, so leave the bars on to the very last step. Okay, now we're going to actually solve some absolute value equations. Okay, the difference is the variable is going to be inside the absolute value bars. Okay, so I'm figuring out what number goes inside the bars so that the result is 9. So just looking at this, what is your guess for the answer? Okay, yeah, x could for sure be 9, because the absolute value of 9 is 9. Are there any other numbers this could be? Yes, it could be -9, because when I absolute value -9, I also get 9. So absolute value equations typically have 2 different answers. Okay, so for B, the absolute value of n is 14. What is n? Exactly, n could be 14, or n could be -14. Okay, and I'm going to write it out, but I'm going to show you a lazy way to write it if you prefer. Okay, this is the lazy shortcut way to write this. If I want to say n is 14 and -14, we say n is plus or minus 14, and that just means n is +14 and -14, but it's kind of like a shortcut way to write it. Okay, for C, the absolute value of P is 0. What's P? It's 0. What about -0? 0 is neutral. There's no such thing as -0, +0. So this is the one case when an absolute value equation has only one answer. Okay, now let's look at D, which looks a little more complicated. D says the absolute value of n plus 5 is 7. Okay, now normally I would want to minus the 5. I can't minus the 5 because it's stuck between these bars. Okay, but I do know from above here, whatever's in the bar has to equal 7, or whatever's in the bar has to equal -7. So I'm going to write this as 2 equations. So the first situation is whatever's in the bar equals 7. And I don't use the bars anymore because I'm saying what's inside the bar is going to be 7. Or whatever's in the bar could be what? -7. Okay, I'm going to solve both of these equations. I'm going to get 2 answers. So if I minus 5 here, I get 2. Let's check if that makes sense. If I plug in 2, 2 plus 5 is 7. If I absolute value 7, I get 7. That works. Let's try solve the other one. -7 minus 5 is -12. Okay, let's see if this one makes sense. If I plug in -12 and I get -12 plus 5 is -7, and when I absolute value -7, I also get 7. So I got 2 answers. They just don't have that same number, positive, negative. Okay, let's try one more. For E, the absolute value of y minus 4 is 1. Okay, I can't plus the 4 because it's trapped in the bar, so I'm going to write it as 2 equations. Okay, whatever's in the bar could be positive 1, it could also be negative 1, and then I'm going to solve it both ways. Okay, y equals 5 is my first answer. Plus 4, plus 4. Okay, y equals 3 is my second answer. And if you want to check your answers, I plug it in the original equation. If I plug 5 in here, I get 5 minus 4 is 1. When I absolute value the 1, I get 1. When I plug in 3, 3 minus 4 is negative 1. When I absolute value negative 1, I also get 1. I'm going to show you an alternate way to solve it. You don't need to solve it this way, but some people are ready for it. Okay, just like above, there's abbreviation for saying the equation could equal 1 or negative 1. So I could say y minus 4 equals, it could be 1 or negative 1. So lazy, I'm going to say plus minus 1. Okay, then I want to solve it, so I'm going to plus the 4 over. Okay, now in my head, I'm treating this as two different answers. So first, let me look at the positive. If I do positive 1 plus 4, I get 5. Okay, for my second answer, I've already done the positive one. Now I do the negative 1. If I do negative 1 plus 4, I get 3. So I still get the answers 5 and 3, and this is a different way to show your work. So if you're comfortable, you can do this way. I'm going to do it this way for now.